What is up? I'm Danny D, the man you came to see, your buddy, your pal. Today we're going to be talking about one of the greatest promotions in wrestling history. We're going to dive deep into ECFNW. What's up, guys? I'm Danny D, and today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest promotions in wrestling history, Extreme Championship Wrestling. We're going to be talking about how it changed the wrestling industry forever. I remember back when I was 13 years old, I would watch ECW when my parents went to sleep, when my dad wasn't home, and now I get to watch it as an adult. I can watch it anytime, any place, anywhere, and we're going to dive deep into why I loved it so much. And if I'm just looking at the past with rose-colored glasses, was it actually as great as it was? And I have a theory that ECW changed wrestling history forever, and we're going to see if that theory is right or wrong. That's what we're going to do in today's video. ECW changed everything in wrestling history for the good. Well, we're going to talk about that today. So we got to talk about what ECW actually was. ECW started as Eastern Championship Wrestling back in 1992, 91, 92, and it was founded by a man named Todd Gordon. But it was in Philadelphia, and it was aligned with the National Wrestling Alliance. National Wrestling Alliance was aligned with Eastern Championship Wrestling. It was a small little bingo hall called the Viking Hall in Philadelphia, and there was nothing to say that ECW was going to be born out of that, or this place would change wrestling history forever, until a man came along, and his name was Paul E. Dangerously. If you don't know the name, you probably know this man as Paul Heyman. He is Brock Lesnar's advocate. He is also the Tribal Chief's right-hand man. Paul E. Dangerously, or Paul Heyman, as you might know him, came into Eastern Championship Wrestling in 1993. He became the head of creative, and that's when everything started to change. And he actually started to implement some of his crazy ideas. His crazy ideas like giving the wrestlers freedom, making them more authentic, getting characters and storylines based out of Japan, Mexico, influences from Southern wrestling. All these things combined made what ECW we see today as the company that it is. But there was a really big thing that happened, and everything changed on August 27th, 1994, because there was an NWA title tournament, and the one and only Shane Douglas won that tournament. But what did he do after? Well, he decided that the NWA Championship was no longer, he threw it in the trash. He said that the ECW Championship was the best championship in the world, and that's when ECW became Extreme Championship Wrestling, and that's when everything changed forever with ECW, and I say the whole entire wrestling industry. Now, was this the biggest swerve in wrestling history? Did Paul Heyman know that he was going to do this? Did he tell Todd Gordon about that? We're going to talk about that in another video. But what I do know is ECW wasn't just built on violence. It was built on characters. It was built on vision. It was built on the vision of the one and only Paul Heyman, one of the greatest minds in wrestling history. This guy is booking out WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia right now when it's happening in a year. He books 3, 4, 5 years in advance, and he knew what he was doing back in the 1990s as well. And if you didn't grow up in the 1900s like this old guy right here, you might not know that everything was polished. There was gimmicks. There was all sorts of weird stuff going on in WWF and WCW. Nothing was really catching on. The fans were losing interest, and that's exactly what Paul Heyman knew he could take advantage of. He knew that edgy, authentic storylines are what we're going to connect with people, and what we're going to connect with the biggest character in ECW wasn't Sabu, it wasn't RVD, it was the fans, the chants, the fan interaction, the whole place at the ECW arena. That was the greatest part of ECW, and that's why I love professional wrestling, because it's the only place in the world where you can go and be part of the action, and that's exactly what those fans did. The ECW fans were the biggest characters on the whole entire show, and that drove everything even further, because those fans were so dedicated, so excited. It made everyone else want to be a part of this, and that's exactly what they did. Everyone wanted to be a part of ECW as it grew and grew and grew, and I don't even think the Attitude Era would be the Attitude Era without ECW's influence, because ECW was one of the biggest promotions to start doing that hardcore wrestling, start doing these authentic storylines, and Vince McMahon and Vince Russo caught on to that, and they started putting these things in as well. And without ECW, we wouldn't have characters like Mick Foley, who was Cactus Jack back then. Stone Cold Steve Austin was in ECW. We had Rob Van Dam, we had Sandman, we had Sabu. All these guys wouldn't have come out and actually be able to make a name for themselves and be in WWE if it wasn't for ECW. Also, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs, one of the greatest matches of all time. That one existed as well. I don't think the Hardy Boys would have had that influence. Even people like Darby Allin wouldn't have that hardcore wrestling influence without ECW. Their fingerprints are all over the place. That's why I think ECW changed wrestling forever, and I think my theory is correct. Do you think my theory is correct? You give me a comment, give me a share, give me a like on this video if you think my theory is correct. If you think I'm full of you know what, then also comment on this video as well, because ECW wasn't just created on a violence, it was created on the vision vision of Paul Heyman and what he wanted to do in the wrestling industry, and it's changed the wrestling industry forever. 25 years later, at Paul Heyman's Hall of Fame speech, people are still chanting ECW at his speech. So it's just one of those things that I think it changed wrestling history forever, and I hope you think it does too, and I hope I convinced you at least a little bit that my theory was correct. My wrestling theory that ECW did change everything forever. We just scratched the surface though. We're going to talk more about Paul Heyman and the characters in ECW and how they also changed wrestling forever. If you want to watch that, stay tuned to the series because we're going to do this every single week. I'm Danny D. This is Diving Deep into ECFNW.